What is the context of use? To understand its context of use, I think it's important to first understand what the definition of social development theory is. According to Sarah Mason Sarah from her article titled Social Development Theory, in the social development theory, Leo Vygotsky primarily explains that socialization affects the learning process in an individual. It tries to explain consciousness or awareness as the result of socialization. This theory places importance on communication with others in the learning process and how that interaction can have an impact on how we learn. Here is an example of this stated by Sincero. For example, a child tries to chronologically arrange the blocks that contain the letter A to Z. At first, his performance is poor, but when his mother sits beside him and tells him how to arrange the letters properly, he begins to learn how to do so. As that process continues, gradual release takes place in the form of less help from the parent and more individual work from the child, and the child is able to complete the task independently and successfully. The most commonly well-known concept of social development theory is the zone of proximal development, which, as listed above, places importance on how communication with others can help individuals complete a task more successfully, and also places importance on identifying what type of instruction is optimal for each child. According to Seth Chaiklin in his article, The Zone of Proximal Development in Vygotsky's Analysis of Learning and Instruction, the common conception of the zone of proximal development presupposes an interaction between a more competent person and a less competent person on a task, such that the less competent person becomes independently proficient at what was initially a jointly accomplished task. This interaction could be a teacher-student interaction where the teacher is working independently or in a small group to scaffold the lesson with those students. For example, if a teacher were working with a group of first graders on the concept of addition, they might start by explaining what addition is to the student, then complete some problems together, then have students work with peers to complete problems, and then have students work individually to complete problems. This gives students the ability to work with the teacher and their peers to communicate their thinking and see the process before completing the task on their own. To determine a student's zone or best starting place for them to learn based on development, there are three aspects that are looked at: generality assumption, assistance assumption, and potential assumption. Generality assumption takes a look at the amount of tasks a student can perform individually versus the amount of tasks a student can perform in collaboration with another student or teacher. According to Chaiklin, at best, the number or kinds of tasks must be taken as indicators to be interpreted in relation to the level of development. Assistance assumption focuses on specific interactions a student has. Arguably, the notion of the zone of proximal development is little more meaningful than that of a learning situation presented to a child where adults and or more advanced children directly or indirectly have a positive influence on the child. Potential assumption directly relates to a student's potential to learn. According to Chaiklin, this aspect often seems to inspire the idea or expectation that it will be possible to greatly accelerate or facilitate a child's learning if the zone can be identified properly. In other terms, providing a student with an individual that has knowledge of the specific skill they are working on, like a teacher, to help them guide them through the process, allowing students to have social interactions to observe and practice their skills, and scaffolding the learning process can help guide students through mastery of given skills. Once a student masters a given skill, a teacher can identify and complete the same process for another skill that challenges that student. The selection of skills for each student can be based off of various factors such as pre-tests, formative assessments, and teacher observations.